Hey Photoshop folks, guess what we're going to talk about today? It's a secret. Uh-oh, I forgot. I left the layer on. It's about layers. So let's get started. Layers. What can we say about layers? For one thing, just about everything has layers, it seems like. For instance, what we see here, onions. Onions obviously have layers. We can't see the outside or the inside layer for the outside layer. I mean, they're somewhat translucent, but still, there's so many layers there, you can't see through the core of an onion, right? Our skin has layers. Now, obviously, we have an extra layer going on here with some kind of crusty material. I don't know, flour caked on. I don't know what it is. Makeup gone wrong? Maybe. But anyway, we have layers in our skin, right? We have the epidermis and the whatever dermis, but there are layers in our skin. Earth has layers. Crust, mantle, outer core, inner core. But yeah, we can't see that inner core. Thank goodness. If we could, it'd be mighty warm here. Well, I could use a little warmth, but not that much. Have you ever heard the term layers of flavor? That's right. In cooking, the most scrumptious food I've ever tasted didn't just have a single flavor to it. It had layers of flavors. And you see all these folks that smoke their meat and grill, they work on applying layers of different kinds of spices and so forth to bring up layers of flavor. Obviously, with layers of paper or reams of paper, you can't see what's under each page right here, can you? Whatever's on top in the layer stack, that's what you're going to see. If you're looking right down directly on top of this pile of colorful paper, the only one you're going to see is the yellow. But looking at it from the side, we can see the individual layers, right? We know that there's some reds coming up there, and there's some blues and orange and yellows and purples, but we can't see any of them except the top one because it covers all the rest. And that's the way layers work. Whatever's on top is what we see first. Just as what we're going to work with today on these different layers, the thing that's on top, that's the stacking order. Right now we have the young lady in the office, we have books, and we have this wonderful looking texturized background at the bottom. That's the way layers are built. The thing that we see on top, if we turn that eyeball off, we see the books, and then we see the background. So there's a stacking order here, just like there's a stacking order here. Let's get going. Like I said in the oops segment, I left the layers on, but kind of gave it away, didn't it? I'm going to turn that stuff off. Yeah, we're going to talk about layers, and it's really I don't know, it may be tied with selections as the most important stuff in Photoshop. We're going to really open some doors in your mind, so to speak, with what we're going to do in layers. You have to have a basic understanding what good layers even are to want to learn how to use them. A lot of people just go about Photoshop a little bit differently, and they erase things, and then they run into all kinds of issues. Well, we're going to pay close attention to the different powers that are in layers. So let's look at normally any layer that you start with is going to be your background layer. So if you open up a landscape image in your computer, it's going to be your background layer. And if you put other things on top of it, they'll be like these layers. They'll sit there on top of what you've got here at the bottom. So if you're working on more than one image, this is how it's going to be. Obviously, if you just have your landscape image and you don't intend to add some sun or different colors into it or whatever, you're just going to have one layer. But there's more than an even chance you're going to be using layers for many things, especially after you understand what all they can do for you. So as you can see in this particular setup, we've got a young lady in what appears to be an office space. That's the way I'm going to refer to it, lady in the office. And then we have a stack of books that's on the right side. And then again, we have the original background layer. Notice it has a padlock on it. Well, that padlock is very significant. It means, number one, I can't move this image. See, it's locked. I can't, for instance, paint on this image. It says basically do not enter. It won't let us paint. If I try to fix something, like get rid of this spot and turn on one of our great tools inside of Photoshop, like the spot healing brush, same thing. Do not enter. Don't even try it. It won't work here. Well, we can do a couple of things with this layer that make it more valuable if we want to alter it. If we don't need to alter it, just leave it alone. Leave it as background, leave the padlock locked, and we're good to go. But you can click on that padlock and get rid of that. You can also begin to paint on that layer if you want to. If you leave it like that, you've messed up your background, but you can do it. That's the main thing. You can also rename this by double clicking on it. Call this whatever you want to. Fun layer. So you can type anything in there you want. But we're going to leave this as background for reference reasons. And we're going to click that padlock back on and keep it from being misused. Because all of us that use Photoshop make mistakes, and sometimes we can mess up our image a bit. So we're going to leave that padlock on. Padlock. I think I'm coming up with a new car idea here. Padlock. So what we're going to do then is go back up here and talk about this layer. It's on top, obviously. It's on top. It's just like this stack of books. Now the stack of books is the only thing that's on top because I turned that layer off. Whatever's on top on this stack of books is the example of what's going on here. I can move that up, and now it's the top of the heap, so to speak. This layer is now like that book. It's the top one. Okay? Then the gal underneath, if I turn her eyeball on, that's what makes the layer visible. She's not visible. Why? Because this layer of books, let's just double click that and say books. And let's double click this one and say girl in office. Click. All right, so now we know what we got. So it's very important in what we call the stacking order. It's like having a bunch of pictures in glass frames. Take the backs off and you see the picture on the glass. Well, if it happens to be like a wallet-sized photograph in a big piece of glass, we got all kinds of room around it. So if you had another image on a piece of glass behind it, you could see part of it, right? Because you only have a little piece covering the next image. And that's what's going on here. This is full. It's filling the whole screen. So we can't possibly see the girl in the office. The girl in the office and the books are covering the background. So we can't see the background either. If I turn off the books, now we see the girl and we still can't see the background. We turn that off, we see the background. All right, let's look at this a different way. I can move this layer wherever I want because it's not locked. It's not the background. So this is the move tool, which allows me to slide this, got to be on the right layer, by the way. Wherever the gray is, the other gray, that's the layer that's selected. So if I select the background, that means that's active. You see the brackets around the thumbnail. And now when I click that layer, you see the brackets around the books image. So I can now determine that's the selected layer. All right, so with the move tool on, I can click and drag that, and now we see the girl underneath. Notice the layer up here, the books, has all this, I guess you could call it checkerboard with light gray. That means wherever you see the light gray means that's invisible space. There's nothing there. Let me show you. Turn these two off. There it is. That's the invisible area. Wherever you see that checkerboard, there's some at the top here. If I move that layer up, then that's hidden, and we move the image on over and it's all hidden. So there's no invisible space. If I move it off this way, again, you see right through, and if I have this layer turned on, you can start seeing her. So whatever is covered up by the top layer, I can't see underneath it. Hopefully that makes what layers do a little clearer for you. So again, if I move that back over on top, square that up, we can't see anything under it. And this is called the stacking order if the books are on top. I can take the girl, if I left click, hold the mouse down, drag that up, see the double blue lines there? It means you can drop it right there and it'll be on top. All right, so now she's at the top of the stacking order and I can't see the books. But she's not locked, this layer's not locked, I can move it. So now when I do, I see the books partially. Move them over here, we can see all of them. Okay? Can't see the background, but if I move this over here, like this, and I go to the books and highlight that and move that over and turn on this layer's eyeball, we can now see the top layer, the second layer, which is the books, and the background layer, all three. All right, this is the layer it's highlighted. We can click, drag that back over, highlight that one, bring that back over. All right, hopefully it's becoming a little more clear what the purpose of the stacking order is. Again, if we move the girl down, we see the double lines, that means it's going to go in underneath the books. And now the books are covering her. Again, I can slide the books over if we got that highlighted. Slide the books over, she shows. But I can't see the background. So I go to her layer, move it out of the way a little bit, and now I can see some of the background. Can't see all of it. If I turn the eyeballs off of both of these layers, no problem. See the background now. All right, let's turn that back on, move her back over. Same thing with this. So you see the importance of the eyeball. it makes the visibility of the layer. You just can't see it unless the eyeball is turned on. It means I can see it. If it's off, I can't see the books. Now I can see the books. Okay. Let's move forward a little bit with some things. For instance, let's say I want to see the girl, but not have to move the books. Well, what we can do is erase. Here's the eraser, or you can press the letter E for erase. And we just got to be on the right layer. And we just go right through here. And we're just erasing part of the top layer, as you see there. Let's just come over here a little bit more. And now we see the books, we see the girl, we don't see the background. If we want to see the background, we need to go to the girl because she's still covering up everything. And we can also erase some in that layer. So now we're seeing the girl, the books, and the background. If I turn the books off, we see more of the girl's picture. And if we turn that off, we see all the background. Now, there's a big problem with doing that. A lot of digital artists will collage things together to make a, complete image. And you can't do that after you've erased all that information. We've got a hard edge here, we've got a hard edge here, and it just, that's not very much. It is a collage, but it's not a good one. So here's what a lot of people would do. I'm going to back up using Control-Z. That takes too long. Let's go to history. If your history is not down here in a tab, you just go to Window and down to History. So what we're going to do is move back until we have it like we had it before. Let's just see what we got here. Yeah, we've got it all back. Good. So here's how some people used to collage, including me. If I want to see the girl, obviously this has to be selected. Still using the erase tool, we want to change the opacity of the brush down around 20%. Also, we need to click on the brush itself, which is right here. The paintbrush, the eraser, all of these work like paint tools. So this is the brush for it. We click on that and you see hardness is 100%. That's why the edge was so sharp. Opposite of hardness is softness. So 0 hardness equals 100% soft. So now, if I use the eraser tool and paint, I'm only basically erasing this around 20% at a time. So you can see what we have here. Girls coming in, the books are still there. We can just kind of bring her in a little bit like this. Bring her in a little bit more. Now, if we want to see the background, we go down to where the girl is, make that highlighted, and we can bring in some of that background as we erase over here. So this is the way collaging used to be done by many, many people. And if we go back up to where the girl is, we can, we're bringing more of the background in. So I'm going to Control-Z that a little bit, get it back some of that quality, and we'll go up here and maybe punch out a little bit more where the girl can come in. And that looks pretty decent. So obviously we would take more time and smooth things out better and make it make better sense. But I think you get the idea. These three things now are collaged together and kind of makes a nice effect. All right, but the problem is, let's say we want to save this. This is a real piece of art, we think, and we might want to do more with it later. If we save this right now and come back to it later, this stuff's gone. Wherever you see that checkerboard, that data there is gone. We can't any longer bring those things back. So whatever's missing off her sleeve here is gone. Whatever's missing off the book image is gone. We can't, bring that back. Put more book back where the shoulder is now. Can't do it. It's erased. The data is gone. So what we do to make this whole situation much better is use what's called layer masks. So let me restore this image, get all the data back again, so I can show you how this would go now if you understand layers. And this is how it should be done. Hold on. Okay, so I have our layers back. Now, right down here at the bottom of the layers palette is something I refer to a lot as the square donut. It's basically a rectangle with a hole right in the center of it. That is the icon for layer mask. So this layer right here is highlighted. These are the books, obviously. So if I click this one time, it puts a mask on the layer that's highlighted. The mask is going to let us get rid of some of this information over here so the girl will show without erasing it. So what we do is turn on a paintbrush. Before we do that, I'm going to change this color here. Sorry about that. And I'm going to change this color here, just so you can see the colors. Because whenever you paint inside a layer mask, the only colors that you'll see over here are grays and blacks and whites. Sometimes you'll see a gray in here. This should be black and or white. Always. Now here's the key. White reveals, black hides. So if I paint with black, it's going to hide this information and let us see through to the girl. So it's hiding information right here and letting us see right here. So here we go. At 20% or so, we're just gonna, and let me soften that up. Let me right click, and that also brings up this menu. Bring the hardness all the way to the left, and then go back up there and click. And now it brings it in softly. And we can control how much and how fast it comes in. And we're just kind of taking our time here and letting that build up. So she's kind of coming out of the books. All right. Now what if we want the background to also show through? Well, we go to the next layer down, click on it, and also click on the square donut for a layer mask. So now we paint with black again. And if you want to toggle back and forth, you can either do it this way, or you can press the letter X as in X-ray, and it will toggle the colors back and forth. So we're going to paint again on this layer, and notice the black is coming in, but we're still covered by this image here. So until we get some of this space covered by this image, we won't see the background come through. So we just start painting on this layer, bring it over there by her a little bit. And remember, if you start seeing the paint go a little bit odd, it may be because the brackets aren't around the mask and they're around this. And if you do that, you're now painting with colors over here. So we're going to Control Z that, click back on the mask. Now we go to the one with the girl on it, and we can start bringing more of the background in. And let's make this bigger, and we can cover more territory a little quicker. Now, the areas that we can't see through very well yet, that's because this image is on top, so we have to paint that stuff away first. And then go to this one, and we can get rid of more of that. So we have the books, the girl, the background. And obviously we would do a better job painting if we go down here and get closer to her arm. Got to do that on both of those masks. And take a little time, obviously. Do that up around the head as well. And on both of these. So now if you save this, you can save it with all layers. And if you come back a year later to work on it, guess what? These masks will still be there. And what's the benefit of that? You say, well, what if we paint with white up here on this stack of books? The girl is going to now start disappearing again, because now we're making the books whole again. We're filling in with white, and if we want to go faster, we turn that opacity up to 100%, and now all we have is that white area, and we can't see through it anymore. We're just seeing the girl. Okay? Can't even see the background. That mask isn't doing anything because this image covers everything. So if I go back, make sure this is highlighted, paint with black. Here she comes again, along with the background, because that mask has already been painted on with black. So if I paint on this layer with white, pressed X, we can't see through the background because we filled it in with the information that's right there. Paint with black again on that mask, and the background shows. So unlike the eraser, we didn't destroy anything. We didn't hurt anything, because we can bring it right back again simply by painting on the mask. And let me show you something. We'll save this as testing the layers. Save. I'm going to just throw this whole thing away. But when I do, it's going to throw, the history is going to be all gone. But let's just do it. Okay, so now this image is there and this image is up there, but they no longer have anything to do with the one we just did. I have to reload that. The file open, and it should be under testing layers. And look there, it's all back, except the history is gone, but we can work on these layers now. Notice I painted with color, wasn't in the mask. So we got to do a Control-Alt-Z or Command-Option-Z on a Mac. Make sure we're on the mask. And we can fill that right back in if we decide we don't want that part to show. We can come back up here on this mask and paint with black still yet and bring more of our growl back into the picture. So yeah, it's like magic if we control our images with layer masks. So I'm going to just soften this up. It is soft. Okay, click up here, make that go away, and I can bring her blouse back in here. So now she's kind of sitting in front of the books, even though she's underneath that layer, because we've masked part of those books out to show through to where the girl is. Now, if we switch that back to white, we didn't lose anything. We didn't hurt anything. And if we change that back to a low opacity, we just take it back a little at a time. Okay, hopefully it's becoming more and more clear what these masks can do for us. All right, remember that up at the top when we started this, layers was on. Okay, let's go find that text. There's the text. What if I put a mask on it? So the square donut, add that to the text layer. Right now, wherever the text is, we can't see directly under those letters. Let's just say we don't want the Y to completely show. We paint with black, and we just start painting, and her blouse is showing through. We can do the same thing over here with the R, the S, and we can do the same thing with the L to where it doesn't all show. We can bring it all back at once or paint it back in using white. Remember, white reveals, black hides. So these masks will work on any of your layers. It's very, very powerful. Okay, let me show you another case of masking. I'm going to hide that again so the layer stuff doesn't show. And we'll just fold that back up in its group. All right. What if I wanted to make her hair a little bit reddish, for example? So I've turned this layer off so we could just see the young lady in the office. Let's just click on that layer. Up in here, you see all the adjustment layers, or should. If you don't, go to Window, Adjustments, and this panel will pop up. This is a color adjustment right here, the icon. And I'm just going to maybe make it a little bit redder right here. Now, the problem can be if you have multiple layers under here, you can affect the colors of everything underneath. So what you want to do is click this little icon, which means it's only going to apply to the layer directly below, which is the girl. It's not, the layer below is not this, it is simply this layer. So we click that, it kind of kicks that over with a little down arrow saying, I'm only going to affect this. All right, so now when we pull that color down to a little bit of red, it's only going to affect that layer. Let's get this out of the way. You can see if I turn the eyeball off on this layer, which is just the color layer, see the difference in her hair? Now we can make it more dramatic. If we double click on it, we can go back in there again and run the saturation up as well. So now you can really see it, and we're affecting her blouse as well. So that's the beauty of this. It creates its own layer mask. So now I can apply that effect, that reddening, only to her hair by going over here and saying I want to hide. So I use black. I want to hide that effect off of her blouse. So I'm going to do this kind of fast by using 100%, and I'll just paint right down here and over here on her jacket, taking care not to do it on her hair. We'll get rid of the color that we changed on her chest. If we were really good and took our time, we could get this without affecting the hair so much. Let's go back over it with white and get this hair, back again. All right, so we fixed the skin. Go back to black, hide that down here. Anything that's on the hands, we don't want them to turn red as well. Or the cup, if we got the cup selected, we'll make sure that's not turned red. All right, so let's look at the mask. You see what I went over, and here is the only thing that has been turned red. Her face is a little bit red, so we can go in there with black again and kind of cool that. If you don't want it to go that much, you can change the opacity and switch back to white and only bring some of that back. There. So this mask was automatically applied to this color change. Just wanted you to see that there are more masks involved in Photoshop than just the ones on the photograph layers. All right, I'm going to throw this away so this doesn't become confusing. Just drag it down that little trash can and it's gone. Another important thing to know about layers is that sometimes layers get messed with in ways that we don't want them to be. And so we need control over the layer sometimes. Okay, so we got to be able to protect it from things, so to speak. So what we can do, I'm going to get rid of this layer mask right here. So we just have this regular photograph of the girl. I'm going to right click over here in this gray and go up here where it says to convert to smart object. You can only see part of that, but rest assured if you go right click on this, you can go to convert to smart object. It puts a little icon there in the corner of your thumbnail, which means this now is a smart object. Now, guess what happens in a smart object? Well, let's just look here. We got green on top, paintbrush on, and when we come over here, notice it won't allow us to paint on it. It says no, do not enter. So can't do that. But there's ways around things that we can do to that layer. We can create a new layer. Right here next to the little trash can is a turned up corner, like a page that's got the corner curled up. You click it and it provides you with a new layer with absolutely nothing on it. That's what the checkerboard means. Remember, if we turn everything off but that new layer, and I'm just going to call this one paint. The checkerboard means there's no data there. This layer is totally invisible, nothing, nada there. So now I can use my paintbrush and paint with green on that layer if I want to. Let's turn the opacity of that up. And now you can see the green. If I turn her on, you see the green over the top of her. Remember, whatever is showing at the top of the stack, that's going to be on top of everything that we view. So if we turn that eyeball off, we no longer see it. We can also move, the only thing on that layer is that green. We can move it anywhere on the screen we want to. We can also transform that green line. So we can do a Control T or Command T on a Macintosh, and we can move our mouse outside where it turns into the double arrows, and we can spin it around. We can do whatever we want. We can grab the ends of this and change the shape of it. If we hold down the Shift key, it changes perspective proportionally, and so you can just do whatever you want with it. Move it anywhere on the screen you want. Double click and it completes the transform. So lots of things that you can do with layers, and we can continue to paint, this time with maybe some red over here and some red going down here. But guess what? We have not hurt this layer at all. If I turn that eyeball off, that's all on this layer. It's not on this. But because it's over that layer, we can see it. What's underneath it's a little bit harder to see. If we paint this a lot, just turn on a big paintbrush and paint with that green, it's the same thing as having that big image on top of the stack. We now can no longer see what's underneath it. We can punch a hole into it. Remember, click on the old mask, paint with black, and we can punch a hole through it. Remember, again, black hides. It's hiding this green so we can see through it. But if we paint with white, white brings it all back. It reveals this layer. Black hides this layer. White brings back that layer. Okay? So there's just so much power at our fingertips. Let's just get rid of all the data that's in here. We can do a Control A and just hit backspace or delete on a Mac, and we've gotten rid of all the color that's in there. Let's just paint real quick with some red, just like that, and maybe like that. So again, that's the only thing on that layer are those two little bits of paint. But because it's over the top of the girl layer, then that shows on top. It covers. All right, so turn this books back on. It's partially covering because of the mask. Again, if I go to that mask and select it, turn on the paintbrush, paint with white, and the girl starts going away because it's revealing only what's here. We can hide it by painting with black. We're hiding that little space beside the book with black. We reveal the books again when we paint back with white. Again, a big key of this is using the opacity of the brush to bring it, what we want to see through there, bring it in a little bit at a time. You can better control it and see, kind of get an idea what you want that to look like on the fly. Because it can be very powerful not to have her come in at 100%. This is the way we control those things coming in. Now, more about this. I'm going to hide the books again. the fact that this is a smart layer, let me show you something. I'm going to select this. Actually, let's just select a bit of her head. This is demonstration purposes here. Control J. That puts her head, well, it's supposed to. Maybe I was on the wrong layer. Control J. There. Now her head is here on this layer, all by itself, right? And I can turn on the move tool and I can move that wherever I want to. I'm going to make a copy of that. And to do that, I'm just doing another Control J. So we got two copies. This one, move this one. And we've got, turn that eyeball on. So we've got these two copies. We'll turn this one off for right now. I want to show you what happens to this layer if we resize it a few times. And this gets done a lot when people are using Photoshop. They'll bring in an element and they want it to fit in such a place in their image, and then they change their mind and make it bigger, and then they change their mind again, make it smaller. Watch what happens. Control T to make this bigger. So this is the way we transform it. Again, to keep perspective, we hold down the Shift key and we drag this out. And we're going to make it pretty large. Double click. Looks pretty good, right? All right, I'm going to zoom in, do a Control T again, and I'm going to make this very, very tiny. Okay, and I'm going to hit Enter. So now it's very small. There you can see it. I'm going to zoom back out again. I'm going to do a Control T again, just like if we were, putting something in the image and resizing it. Double click. You see what just happened? Here's the original. This is the way it did look. Look at it now. That's what happens when we continually transform things, or maybe just once or twice. They really fall apart. What if we do this again? Which happens when a lot of people are working. Actually, we need to keep that on the page. Make it smaller. Hit Enter. Control T. Keeping the perspective. And you can tell this thing's getting worse real quick. And let's just bring the other one over here where you can see it. That's the way it was. All right, I'm going to show you a comparison. Remember a while ago I had us turn this into a smart object? Well, that's what we're going to do with this photo of the little girl, or the young lady. She looks little there. So right click in here, and I'm going to go up to Convert to Smart Object. And now I'm going to turn this one off. Bring her over here. And Control T. I'm going to make her big first. Remember. Double click. Okay. Control T. Need to zoom a little bit so I can see all the little squares. Make it tiny. Oh, I messed that up. We need to keep it on the palette here in the image. So there it is, tiny. Hit Enter. Control T. Holding down the Shift key again. Double click. Okay, that's one gigantic transform, and it's still looking really, really nice. Control T again. Make it tiny, tiny, tiny. Hit Enter. Control T. Hold down the Shift key. Double click. Still perfect. Control T. Make it tiny, tiny, tiny. Hit Enter. Control T. Hold down the Shift key. Double click. And it's still perfect, right? Let's compare it to the other one. That one was just done, I think, twice. This one's been done 4 times. And it's still perfect because it's a smart object. Now let me show you the trick behind the smart object. This is not really the image. It's just kind of like a stand-in. We're never, with a smart layer, we're never playing with the original. If I double click on this image, you're going to see why. Right here is the image that that's being held secret. We can't touch it. Notice it's called a layer 7 PSB. This is layer 7. Where does PSB come from? So normally we're talking about PSDs, not PSBs. So this PSB is the secret file that we're really having kind of work behind the scenes. All right, so that we can turn that back off. That's what we're seeing here is the pretty much the stand-in for that PSB. So no matter what we do to this file, it's still going to look good because of that PSB is out there hiding. All right, but if we don't make them smart objects, that's what happens when we do a couple of transforms that are kind of radical like that. It starts softening. Even if we don't go radical, it's going to soften a little bit. And if all the rest of the stuff in your image looks really good and sharp, well, just one transform is going to soften it a little, so it's going to be a little bit problematic. There is another big thing that people like to do in Photoshop to really work over colors, sometimes sharpening, just all kinds of things that we can do in the program, part of the program that we get with Photoshop, and that's Camera Raw. And it doesn't make any difference if it's a raw image or it's a JPEG. You can take it into Camera Raw anytime you want because right under Filter is the Camera Raw. And now it's not just Camera Raw, it's a filter in our filters area. So if we click this, and it takes us into Camera Raw, and let me try to get this in a normal viewing area here as best I can. There we go, we're getting it in there. All right, so we got all these things that we can do to it here, and we're going to get into Camera Raw later on in our sessions. But right off the bat, there's some things we can do right here with sliders. Change the temperature of the image right through here. We can adjust the exposure, obviously here. One of the things we can do is adjust the whites, and this is a little bit different. If you hold down your Alt or Option key, you want to find where the light just starts coming in. You see those little fringes of color? You don't want to go past that and do something like this. Then you're going to have too much in the whites. So you just bring that in a little bit. The blacks, same way. Hold down the Option key or the Alt key and go left with this and bring in some of the blacks right that. And that really, you'd be surprised how those two sliders can change just about any image when you're done. It pops the contrast just a little bit more, and you wouldn't normally even notice it, but before and after it, and you'll be amazed by it. So there's a lot of things that we can do in here. Clarity, we can bump that up. It builds contrast too. We can make some of the colors a little more vibrant that weren't before. And let's just say, oh, that's wonderful. And we click OK. Well, here's what happens on a smart layer. If we scroll down a little bit further, here's the Camera Raw filter we just ran. And it did not, again, we did not do this on the actual image. It did it down here. So it created this. So here we go. If we don't like the way it looks now, if maybe we went too far, if you double click right on where it says Camera Raw, it goes right back to where the settings were that we just changed it to. The vibrance was kicked up, the clarity was kicked up. So these are exactly where they were before. And guess what? If you save this right now as a PSD file, this is going to be, when you open it up in 2 days or 2 months or 2 years, that's still going to be there, and you can go back in with those same settings and change them if you want to, or fine tune it. Another thing we can do real quick is go to filter and the filter gallery. Now this is a way of doing some extraordinary filtering, maybe some things that we don't even want to consider, but all of these can be a unique look and be fun. And I'll just show you real quick running it this way. We're not going to fine tune anything. I'm just going to click OK to show you that now we have the filter gallery. So if I double click that, it goes right back into where we were. And let's just say we want to bump up the shadow intensity but bring down the detail on the brush. And we click OK, and you get it back in here and say, well, that's too much. Well, double click it again, and it goes right back to the settings that you just put in, and you can bring the detail back up. You can take the texture back down. Intensity, we can back that off, and it's going to remember those settings if you open it up down the road too. And guess what? This is a layer mask. So if we turn on a paintbrush and click on that mask, make sure the brackets are around it. Notice it changed to black and white. If we don't, maybe we like that texture in the hair but not in the face. So let's just paint in the face area, bring it back to normal, and leave that in the hair. See the difference? Now, that's 2 different filters that have run on here. Camera raw changes and the filter gallery with the watercolor effects. So that's how much her hair has changed. Her face is back to normal. Background's a little bit blue now. But cool, right? There's so much you can do in here, and we haven't hurt anything. All this can still be undone. Remember, if I don't want that paint in there, we go back and paint that again with white. That goes away. We can click on either one of these 2 things, and the settings will be where we left them, and we can bring them back to neutral if we want to. Or you can just turn them off, and it's back to normal. You haven't heard anything there either. So lots and lots of benefits to using these smart objects and not hurting your image. Now, it's always a great deal to keep all of your layers, because if you want to come back and fine-tune anything, they're there. As long as you save this as a PSD file, they're there for you. All right, here's another thing I need to show you before we close this session. If you go to Edit, and on a Macintosh, your preferences are up in the left-hand corner. But under Windows, you go to Edit, and down at the very bottom is Preferences. I know you can't see it here, but we want General. And then when we get General, we want to go to File Handling. And in here, once you save your file that you're working on, which is this, you'd give it a unique name. As soon as you start working on any image that you plan on putting any time into and effort, you need to save it and give it a new name. Don't write over the old one, give it a new name. Because Photoshop will not auto-save until you give your file a new name. It defaults to 10 minutes. As you know, and I know, in 10 minutes, a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can happen in 5, but that's the shortest amount that it will let you select. So set this, click on this, make sure all the 3 of these right here are checked. Click OK, and then make sure you do a file save as, and we'll say this is, we already named it, but let's put something else here. Let's put DDD, so I don't want that happy face in there because that doesn't like that. Make sure it is a top one PSD file and save. So now if I close all of this stuff up here, we go to File, Open, and find that testing DDD. Here it is, testing layer DDD. And all of this stuff is here. Again, we can double click on that, go right back in, and here we are into Camera Raw again with the settings exactly where you left them. I think that's awesome. Again, we can turn those things off and on. It's totally up to us, and it will autosave every 5 minutes. And that, my friend, is a big deal. If you've invested half an hour, 2 hours in something, and you lose power, or your computer just decides it's going to throw up, whatever, you know, you've lost everything unless you do the autosave. The other thing you can do is a big plus is when you're working in your image, making these changes, just you do an autosave. And that means you simply reach over to your Control or Command key on a Mac and press the letter S as in Sierra. Control S, Control S, Control S, all the way, all through your work, and you will do an automatic save, and you don't have to worry about the computer behaving. You just do the Control S yourself. It only takes a split second, basically, to put your finger over there, press Control S or Command S, and save your work. Big, big deal. Okay? All right, we went through and saw the stacking order was a really big deal inside of Photoshop. Whatever's on top is the first thing it's going to show. And if that thing on top is big, then that's what's going to cover the entire image, right? So we have another big image down here, but it won't show when something that big is over the top of it. If we turn the eyeball off, we can see on through to the very bottom. Now, all of these things that are up here, I'm going to show you real quick. If I put this on, remember, this is above the background. And if I turn the picture on of the girl again, it's still above her. If I put the books back on, it's above her. I'm going to throw this one away. We don't need a bunch of copies of it. If I want to get rid of this layer mask, I can click on it and then right click and say delete layer mask. And now that's over the top of this, so we can't see that unless we turn the eyeball off. It's over the top of her image and the one that we did all the work to, the watercoloring and everything. And it's over the top of this great big thing. So unless we turn that eyeball off or we mask it, we can't see it. And remember, we can put a mask, which we did, right here. Turn on the paintbrush, and other things start showing through because we're hiding with black. And we'll make it even stronger. And notice whatever's right underneath is the thing that's showing. Then that one, then the one of her sitting right here. And white, remember, white will restore the original mask. It hides, it reveals, I'm sorry, and black hides. It's hiding this, hiding that little hole right there so we see through it. So hopefully this makes layers and what layers do a lot more simple, easier to understand. I hope that you will use the images that I've used here and follow along and get familiar with it, play with it, move them around, use your history to get back where you need to go. Use Control, Alt, and Z, or Command, Option Z to go back in your history also. Just experiment, have some fun, paint on these things, get crazy, so to speak. Remember, you can just select this layer. Let's go back up here to the top. You can select this layer, click on the new layer icon over here by the trash can, and you can paint with any color anywhere in Photoshop and just do whatever you want. That's just on this layer, which you can be turned off or Control A, hit backspace and make it all go away. Lots of fun to be had in this program. So just, play with it. And that's how I learned Photoshop. A lot of it was just trying it, see what happened. Okay? Talk to you all later. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.